thought the hardest part of burying my son would be letting go, until my phone buzzed next to his grave with a message that made my blood freeze. The dirt was still fresh on my son's grave when my phone lit up with the impossible. A text from Marcus himself. "I'm still alive, Mom. Don't trust them." He'd inherited his father's hands, capable, gentle, always building something. When Robert died 5 years ago, Marcus stepped into his shoes without complaint, carrying both grief and responsibility with equal grace. When the doctor said sudden cardiac arrest, I accepted it the way you accept lightning. Random, devastating, final. Dr. Bennett had been gentle but firm. These things happen, especially to men who work too hard and sleep too little. The paramedics had tried everything, but Marcus was gone before they'd even reached the hospital. At Marcus's funeral, I watched my younger son David help lower the casket, his wife Sarah's grip tight on his arm. Everything seemed normal until I caught the way David's jaw tightened when he saw me reading that text. Sarah had handled most of the arrangements, bless her. I'd been too shattered to think about flowers or music or casket choices. She'd chosen everything with perfect taste, even requesting that Marcus be buried in his work clothes rather than a formal suit. It felt right. Marcus had lived in those clothes. This had to be some cruel mistake, maybe a delayed message from weeks ago. But something cold settled in my chest as I watched David help lower the casket. The way his jaw tightened when he caught me looking at my phone. The way Sarah's grip on his arm seemed to tighten. I slipped the phone back into my purse without saying anything. The message could wait. The questions could wait. Right now, I had to say goodbye to my son. That night, I went to Marcus's workshop. Something about that text message wouldn't let me rest. I'd been in this space thousands of times, but tonight I noticed what I'd never seen before. One board behind his desk sat slightly loose. Behind it, an envelope marked "emergency only" in handwriting that didn't look like Marcus's usual confident script. This writing was hurried, shaky. Inside, bank statements showing David's name on accounts I'd never known existed, large cash withdrawals, and a list in Marcus's handwriting titled, "What David Doesn't Know I Know." At the bottom of that list, one line made my blood freeze. Sarah asked about my life insurance policy again yesterday. Third time this month. The message kept echoing in my mind. I'd read it 20 times since the cemetery, but the words never made more sense. Marcus was dead. I'd watched them lower his body into the ground, yet something about that text felt urgent, desperate, real. The letter was dated just 3 days before Marcus died. His handwriting looked shaky, uncertain. So different from his usual confident script. He'd written about feeling watched, about David asking too many questions about the business accounts, about Sarah's sudden interest in life insurance policies and beneficiary information. My breath caught. The partnership had been David's idea 3 years ago when his software company failed. He'd been desperate then, facing bankruptcy and foreclosure. Marcus had been reluctant, but family meant everything to him. He'd even put his own house up as collateral to help David get back on his feet. Now these papers suggested trust had been broken long before Marcus died. The final page contained a list of discrepancies David couldn't explain. Money missing from client accounts, supplies charged twice, subcontractors paid for work never completed. Dr. Bennett had been our family physician for 20 years, but when I asked about Marcus's cardiac arrest, something in his voice didn't sound right. His explanation felt rehearsed, almost like he'd practiced it. "Doctor," I said, "healthy 32-year-olds don't just collapse." His face changed completely. "There wasn't an autopsy, Mrs. Bennett. Your son David insisted on immediate burial with a sealed casket for religious reasons. David, who hadn't observed any faith practices in years, had suddenly become concerned with religious observance. He paused, then added something that made my stomach drop. 2 weeks before this, David had been asking very specific questions about Marcus's heart. drug interactions, emergency protocols, how certain medications could trigger cardiac events. The room felt like it was spinning. What kind of medications? The kind that could kill someone if given in the wrong dose. Detective Morrison looked tired when I walked into the police station the next morning. I'd hired him privately, paying with money from my emergency fund, money Robert had left me for exactly these kinds of unexpected crises. His preliminary questions were gentle until I mentioned the text message and the financial documents. His demeanor shifted completely. He'd handled suspicious deaths before, mostly insurance fraud cases where families turned on each other for money. The combination of sudden cardiac arrest in a healthy young man, immediate burial with a sealed casket, and financial disputes created what he called investigative concerns. Phone records showed heated calls between the brothers in the days before Marcus died, calls that lasted longer and grew more frequent as the week progressed. A restaurant server remembered the sharp crack of David's voice cutting through dinner conversations, loud enough that other diners turned to stare. She'd heard fragments, something about trust, about family loyalty, about making things right. Marcus had left money on the table and walked out before finishing his meal, but it was the security footage from the construction office that broke my heart into pieces I wasn't sure I could reassemble. What I saw on that screen would haunt me forever. My own son, poisoning his brother with the same hands that had once helped me decorate Christmas trees. David entering Marcus's office the morning of his death, carrying what looked like coffee from their usual deli. David leaving 20 minutes later, briefly adjusting something in his jacket, his movements quick and nervous. Morrison was thorough. Within a week, he'd discovered Marcus had been asking questions about David's business practices for months. Mrs. Chen had worked as our housekeeper for 15 years. She'd been more than an employee. She'd become family, watching my boys grow up, celebrating birthdays and holidays with us. She'd been at the office that morning, organizing files in the next room while the brothers met. She'd heard everything. The argument about the missing money. David's accusations that Marcus was being paranoid and ungrateful. Marcus's calm voice explaining that he had evidence, that he was going to the police if David didn't make things right. She'd seen David add something to Marcus's coffee while Marcus was turned away, answering his phone. She'd watched her employer's son poison his brother with the same steady hand he'd used to help carry Christmas presents into our house, but she'd been too frightened to speak up immediately. Her immigration status was complicated, and David had always made comments that left her feeling threatened. He'd joked about calling immigration if she ever disappointed him, remarks that seemed harmless until you understood their true intent. She was the one who'd sent the text message. She'd kept Marcus's backup phone, an old device he'd given her months ago when he'd upgraded, asking her to donate it but forgetting to follow up. Guilt and fear had consumed her until she couldn't stay silent anymore. She'd used the phone to reach out, hoping someone would listen, someone would ask the right questions. The motive was devastating in its simplicity. Sarah was pregnant, had been for 2 months when Marcus died. Between life insurance and business assets, they stood to gain over $2 million, money that would disappear if Marcus had lived to dissolve their partnership. 3 weeks later, the lab results confirmed my worst nightmare. Marcus had been poisoned with heart medication. The ER had retained a blood sample from that morning. Morrison had ordered testing. Sarah's job selling pharmaceuticals had given them everything they needed. They'd planned this meticulously. My younger son and his wife had murdered my older son for money, counting on a grieving mother to accept a tragic accident. They'd even offered to handle all the funeral arrangements, ensuring no questions would be asked, no uncomfortable delays that might trigger investigations. The timeline was damning. Sarah's access to Digitalis through her pharmaceutical sales job. David's sudden interest in Marcus's medical history. The timing of the pregnancy announcement delayed until after the funeral. Even the choice of sealed casket burial made perfect sense now. It would prevent any autopsy before anyone thought to look for it. The arrest happened on a Tuesday. David's face when the police arrived at his door would stay with me forever. Not surprise or confusion, but resignation. He'd been waiting for this moment, probably since the day they buried Marcus. Sarah tried to run. They caught her at the airport with tickets to Costa Rica and a bag full of cash. The trial lasted 4 months. I sat in that courtroom every day, watching my surviving son transform from family member to stranger. The man who'd held my hand at his brother's funeral had looked me in the eye while planning to profit from murder. Mrs. Chen testified with a translator, her hands shaking as she described what she'd witnessed. The prosecution built their case methodically: financial motive, access to poison, opportunity, and deliberate cover-up. David received life without parole. Sarah got 25 years. I sold the house and most of my belongings. The money, every penny I had left, went toward Marcus's dream. He'd always wanted to build homes for families who couldn't afford them otherwise. The Marcus Bennett Foundation broke ground on its first project 6 months after the trial ended. Mrs. Chen helps me run it now. We don't talk much about that morning, but sometimes I catch her looking at Marcus's photo on my desk with tears in her eyes. She saved him in the only way she could, by making sure his killer didn't go free. I'm 73 now, and I've learned that love doesn't stop when someone dies. It just changes direction. Marcus lives in every hammer swing, every foundation we pour, every family that gets keys to a home they thought they'd never afford. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd thrown away that phone, dismissed that message as a cruel prank. But I think Marcus knew I wouldn't. He knew his mother well enough to understand that some truths are worth fighting for, no matter how much they hurt. The workshop still smells like sawdust and coffee. I go there when I miss him most, running my fingers over the tools he'll never use again. But now there's something else there too: peace. The kind that comes from knowing justice was served and love found a way to continue. Every time I walk into Marcus's workshop, I still hear the echo of wood shavings under my feet and that impossible text message ringing in my ears. Tell me in the comments, if your phone buzzed next to a grave with 4 words that could destroy your family, would you have the courage to answer it?